Now the day began to wear away, and the 12 came and said to him, Send the crowd away to go into the surrounding villages and countryside to find lodging and get provisions, for we are here in a desolate place. But he said to them, You give them something to eat. They said, We have no more than 5 loaves and 2 fish, unless we are to go and buy food for all these people. But there were about 5,000 men. And he said to his disciples, Have them sit down in groups of about 50 each. And they did so, and had them all sit down. And taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, he looked up to heaven and said a blessing over them. Then he broke the loaves, and gave them to the disciples to set before the crowd, and they all ate, and were satisfied. And what was left over was picked up, 12 baskets of broken pieces.
In today's Gospel comes from Luke 9:12-17. Probably the most famous and most loved miracle of our Lord, feeding the multitude. And in this miracle, our Lord preached, and people were so happy to hear him. And after many, many hours, and the day was about to finish, as the Gospel says, when the day began to wear out, the disciples went to our Lord telling him, Let them go home. We are in a deserted place here. And I want to give the first point here, that our fathers, the apostles, when they confronted a problem, and the problem here was a lot of people, a big crowd, very hungry people, among them children and ladies, and in the same problem, there is no place to buy food from. But our fathers, the apostles, early on their career as disciples, they looked at the problem, but they never looked at Christ as the solver of the problem. They saw the crowd, the hungry stomach, the people who are crying want to eat, and they saw the places deserted, but they never looked at Christ and as if he is the source of the solution. How can I many times look at a problem and I say I'm in a deserted place when Christ himself is the source? So the first lesson we want to learn from this miracle, where are you looking when you have a problem? Are you looking only at the trouble and what you need to do? Or you also look up at Christ and say, I know I'm in a deserted place, I know I have crowded people who are hungry, but you are also here. Then our Lord told them, let them all be seated, and he told them, you give them something to eat. So they answered, we do not have more than 5 loaves and 2 fish, unless we go and buy food for all these people. And they were 5,000 men plus the children and women. Now, Christ put them not just as a solver of the problem, he put the problem in their lap and saying, you feed them. And as a servant, sometimes Christ gives us that responsibility. You take care of it. And the best remedy is, Lord, I don't have much to solve this problem. I don't have much to feed these people. I only have very limited abilities, and these abilities will not be enough or sufficient to take care of the problem. But the amazing thing here, that our fathers, the apostles, early in their mission, they thought of their abilities and they never looked at his hands. The 5 loaves and 2 fish in my hands are very little and cannot do much. And they never thought how much those 5 loaves and 2 fish will be in his hands. And that's unfortunately always the mistake we carry. We go in a problem and I look at my abilities and say, how how do you want me to do this? How do you want me to feed all these people? Because I look at the abilities in my own possession, in my own hands, and I never look at my abilities if I place them in his hands. 5 loaves and 2 fish would hardly be enough for a child to eat lunch, because those were the tiny little bread, not the real big bread. So his mother probably gave him to eat lunch, and all of a sudden he found that Christ needs the food. But the disciples said, this is nothing. How is this going to feed people? This food, this ability, this talent is hardly good for one person. And I always think of this when we go away in missions, because sometimes we meet major obstacles and we say, how can my ability satisfy all the obstacles in that mission? And the answer is, my ability in my hands has nothing compared to my ability in the Lord's hands. The 5 loaves and 2 fish in our Lord's hands became equal to feed and make them satisfy over 15,000 people. But the 5 loaves in my hand hardly was good enough for a lunch of one person. And I think that's the third lesson. So the first lesson, whom are you looking for? When you are in trouble, do you look all around you and you see the deserted place and the trouble? Or do you look for Christ and pose the problem to him? Second, when you are in a problem, our Lord is asking you to take charge and responsibility. Do you say, I am not doing it, this is too many people in a deserted place, I am going home? And the third and the most important lesson, where are you estimating your ability? Are you estimating your ability based that it is in your possession? How about if you put what you have in God's hand and see the blessing that will happen? So I have very little time for Christ. That's in my hand. But if I put this hour in God's hand, maybe will be used for many hours in what the people need. Maybe I don't have a lot of money to give, but if I give that little money, maybe in God's hand, will be used so many ways. Maybe I don't know how to speak, but the 2 words that I can speak in God's hands can be used in much more glorious ways. I think in today's age and world, we have been so materialistic in counting our abilities, but never think of the blessing if we put our abilities in God's hands. And in today's age, this miracle will be illogic. Because if you go to any business major and you tell him, I want to feed 10,000 people, but I only have food for one, they will laugh at you. But economically and financially and business administration, all of that stop at one area when we put all of this in God's hands, and the blessings cannot be logic. Because when God blesses, does not use logic. The things that we count 2 + 2 in his hands maybe will be 22. We still use a calculator when we serve. How much equals to how many? But in God's hand, the calculator has no meaning. We have to use our wisdom. But if we do not have faith that my little abilities equal 5 loaves can actually accommodate to fit and eat and feed thousands of people, This is what this miracle is all about. Our church used this miracle in always the 5th Sunday. And whenever there are 5 Sundays in a month, the church puts this reading. And the idea is Sunday is a blessing. So 5 Sundays is like an extra blessing. So let us read the 5 loaves and 2 fish. The next thing I want to say about this miracle, that this is the miracle proving the deity of our Lord. Our Lord have healed many and have shut the angry waves. But this miracle is a miracle of proving his godly nature, his deity, that he is God incarnate. To take a small thing and bless it to be thousands and thousands, that's beyond the logic, proving his deity. The next point, and maybe the last one, that our Lord in this miracle used a very organized way in service. Our Lord is a Lord of order. He likes order. And that's why our Orthodox Church likes order. Everything has its time, place, times to sit, time to stand, times to bow down, times to worship, times to sing, times to be silent. And our Lord will go to the disciples and let them be seated 50-50. And you always wonder, those hungry people, do you really want them to be disciplined? Is that the time for it? But our Lord knows that discipline and organization is a manner of worship. We worship better when we are in orderly manner. So today's gospel, Luke 9, feeding the multitude, is a miracle of blessing on a Sunday of blessing. We'll see you in a different Sunday. God bless. Thank you.